Welcome one and all to Last Stop Penn Station podcast featuring Cary Silkin and Ian Riccaboni. They dive deep into Cary's wealth of stories, and no subject is off limits. From the world of wrestling to his ticket agency, growing up in New Jersey, drug-fueled underground days, hustling in the French Quarter of New Orleans, and endless days and nights in New York City, every story is worth telling.
Welcome, everyone. It is Last Stop Penn Station. Ian Riccaboni, Cary Silkin, Cary.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Hello. I'm holding.
No, you're in quarantine.
Well,
not tonight.
Right.
Currently,
yes.
This is pre-recorded. We're not trying to fool anyone. We're doing 2 episodes tonight. But of course, I could have our producer, AJ, do a much better, and we will. But just for a moment, I can't resist. Fuck my baby.
Oh, my goodness.
There it is.
I've had that.
George McRae. Over 6 million downloads. This was a top 10 song.
Really? Well, it's got that mother, father, sister, brother kind of vibe. Who were part of the Philly scene at the time. Who did eventually did the Soul Train theme song. It's got that nice warm early disco vibe. Early disco is good.
Yeah. That was 74, and
yeah.
I guess the Bee Gees. I'll get shit on for this with all my Pink Floyd and Who and Jethro Tull love, but like those early Bee Gees disco hits, I really liked.
Yeah, and they had some success in '68 and '69 with some of the records they put out in the U.S. and obviously Australia. They were gigantic already at that point. But early disco's good. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
real good. Then it kind of got commercialized, and then they did the Star Wars theme song, and sort of started to go downhill a little bit.
The disco duck didn't help.
Yeah, the disco duck wasn't great, but but yeah, so some of those Gamble and Huff tunes are real great from Philadelphia Sound.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I couldn't get that song stuck out of my head, the real version or the improvised version by the nice ladies you met in New York City in 1974.
Yeah, I guess it was summer of 74. So the Shredded Ed. Welcome back to Last Stop Penn Station. I think we're at episode 8 or 9. We don't keep track of season 2.
But what I did keep track of, there was 3 dudes, a lot of cocaine, and you seemed to owe a lot of money. You were couch surfing, living with your parents on and off.
Well, now there's a 4th entity that comes into the picture.
Okay.
And it was mentioned.
It's about 1977 that we're talking about here.
When I went to that barber. Mm-hmm. And I went with his friend, and the friend took me to this guy, Monty. There were guys, it turned out they were partners, Claude and Monty, right? These were like Wall Street kind of young executive types. The one guy lived, I got to know Claude the best. He lived on 84th between Park and like Madison.
Oh, that's fabulous. It's a well-to-do area.
And so this guy takes me up. Now this guy, this Monty, wasn't going to front me anything. I'm coming there cold.
Yeah.
But I had this cash.
Yeah. So
it established a 4th connection, so now. And it's funny because even though all it took was one transaction with Monty, and the next time I went, I probably, if I would have had $500, I was able to get $1,000 worth right out of the gate. You know, it's just the way the game was played. You weren't, and. What was the old adage of the drug dealers? Well, getting the people hooked on drugs, the first one's free.
Really? See, I always thought that was a myth. That used to be on Saturday morning cartoons, and that used to be.
If they, you had a certain vibe to you, they felt you were gonna come back, as opposed to just. It might have been the third time with Claude and Monty, because you had to establish some kind of criteria. Mm-hmm. But now was a fourth entity in the mix. But during this time, with all this Hello Lamb Chop, with all this cocaine craziness, and it was craziness. And you talk about party. It wasn't a party. The party ended. The party ended right away. It was you're like a hamster on a treadmill.
Yeah.
And there was nothing pretty about it. But within all this, I wanted to get back into the lighting game.
Interesting.
I was willing to work.
Okay.
Just and
was it to feel your habit at this point?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Because there's no fee. I really loved doing the lighting.
Okay.
And it was evident with Ring of Honor when I introduced, the lighting to the early Ring of Honor, which we've touched on, but it's really not spoken about enough. That was a huge factor in taking us out of the indie look and making it feel like a show. But anyway, I answered an ad in the good old Aquarian, which Mike G was the editor of, the North Jersey, New York, Long Island music paper. There must have been a Philly music paper. What was the music paper in Boston? Did they have a Massachusetts? Not sure. All right, I'm asking you. But every city had a music paper. The clubs would advertise if whether it was Jay Giles or George Thorogood or whomever was going on sale, there'd be a full page ad.
Yeah.
But I answered an ad. They had a thick, thorough classified in the back because this club scene was booming so strong. There were all these classifieds for musicians and tech people. Mm-hmm. And there was top tri-state area club band needs lighting technician. Mm-hmm. And I answered it. I called whoever it was, and it turned out to be Bonnie Parker. And the Bonnie Parker band was a four-piece rock band. She was up front. She played bass. Ritchie Scarlett on guitar. The other guy was Rudy. Mm-hmm. And the drummer who's going to come into this story, oh, God, I wish I can remember his name. We're going to call him Dave.
Okay.
But they were good. And Bonnie, this was another, Bonnie had this manager. He was like this Englishman. I think his name was Derek. And the band did like 5-6 nights a week. Bonnie had a few originals. I'm gonna look on YouTube. She had an original called Killer, which should have been an FM radio hit. Mm. Now this is in the era with bands like Heart,
right, and
Pat Benatar. Just mentioning the females.
Yeah, right before Joan Jett.
Very good, and there were some, there was such a glut of top English bands, but now bands like Kansas, mm-hmm. and I'm leaving out a lot of names here, but there were other
Boston.
Well, thank you. In this 75, 6, 7, and of course there were the established, obvious, the Crosby, Stills, Nash. Needless to say, Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan. And the
Billy Joel's coming up with Springsteen also, and
right, Billy Joel's huge at this time.
Yeah.
So I go for my audition with Bonnie Parker, mm-hmm. and they had some lighting equipment. I had some lighting equipment, and it's like probably if I would have been I don't know, a chimpanzee that could run a lighting board, they'd have said, you got the job. They gave me the job, and there was a second roadie, this guy Bob, and I can't remember who the sound guy was. But I got the gig. It was for the love of rock and roll, for the love of doing the lighting. She drew a good crowd. She had a good following. Mm-hmm. Was she a show like Joe Savage? Of course not. Nobody was like that. But she was a solid rock and roll act, and playing these good clubs. And it was hard work. And this every night dragging this stuff, schlepping. Thank God they didn't have a keyboard with the B3,
the Hammond B3,
and the Leslie.
Yeah.
But schlepping this stuff, and
even some of those bass stacks, the bass amps and
and I believe I got the gig in spring of '77, which coincides where I finally got an apartment. And this also plays into my ultra escalation of this. Now I had a place to really deal freely as far as the drugs. So I found an apartment. It was near Edison, New Jersey, with my friend Gary, the same Gary that worked for Joe Savage. Mm-hmm. And we've referenced a number of times here. And we found this apartment. It's like they were putting up these apartments. It wasn't near Rutgers. It was, it's like right off Route 287.
Yeah. Right.
When you're going at 287 towards the Parkway Turnpike?
Yeah.
Close enough to there.
Okay.
And I got an apartment there. So I get the Bonnie Parker gig, and I'm enjoying doing it. And my best friend of the bunch there was Ritchie, who over the years, I haven't been able to communicate with him. He's not really on social media, despite the fact he's been in Skid Row. He's worked with Ace Frehley. He's had his own band. I saw him open up for Alice Cooper 8 years ago in Scranton. After the show was over, I tried to find him, and one of the guys in the band told me, he left already. And I said, geez. Anyway, I was friends with Ritchie. And guess who Ritchie used to date? Well, you don't have to guess, because I told you. Ritchie used to date Lou Albano's daughter, right. Linda Albano.
Wow.
And Linda would come around. They dated, and then they were just friends. And she would come to a show now and then. Now, I told him, wow, Lou Albano, holy shit. And when Linda would come around, I would just tell her, I'm just a big wrestling fan. She goes, that's cool. I go, your dad's awesome. She goes, she was just nice, thank you. She didn't want to talk wrestling.
Sure.
And Ritchie wasn't really a fan, but she would come. But Ritchie told me this incredible story that had happened. It might have been the summer before I met him, when he had been dating her. It sort of went south, but they were just friends. Mm-hmm. And this is, let's just say, a year before I got to know them. And Ritchie tells me the story. He says, so Cary, Linda's having problems with her parent, just like every 20-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, and she wants to run away and go fly to California where she had friends. And I'm telling her, you should talk to your parents. Mm-hmm. Don't just run away. She was in the FM stage with them at that time.
Yeah.
And there was Ritchie, this is all Ritchie's story. He says they had some kind of blow up, and she just took off.
Oh,
And
no.
he was like one of the only people that knew where she was.
Yeah.
So she runs away. She goes out to LA or San Francisco or wherever her friend was. And a number of days go by. And now, boys and girls, we're talking pre-internet. We're talking pre-cell phones.
Yeah.
We're talking 1976. So Ritchie lived. Where was Lou Albano billed from? Was he from Port? Not from. It was like somewhere like Westchester County, Yonkers,
yeah,
or
I believe it was Yonkers, New York. Yeah.
well, Ritchie lived in Yonkers, and it was a hot. Once again, Meatloaf. It was a hot summer night, and Ritchie says my phone rings. I don't think he was working with Bonnie Parker then, but whatever. His phone rings, and he answers the phone, and it's Lou Jr., Lou
So-
Albano's son.
So his girlfriend's brother.
Right.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, Ritchie, this is, it's Louie. And he's like, hey, how you doing? He goes, I'm all right. He goes, look, my parents are freaking out.
Yeah.
He goes, do you know where Linda is? And Ritchie's like, Louie, I don't know where she is. I don't know. He goes, well, look, do me a favor. If you hear from her, he didn't give him the hard sell.
Yeah.
He says, if you hear from her, can you please tell her to reach out? You know, my parents are freaking out.
Yeah.
And he goes, I will. And so Ritchie tells me, man, I felt so bad about lying about it. But so now I get on so he had the number
Okay.
of where she was staying.
Yeah.
So he calls her friend, and whenever he got her, he says, listen, would you call your parents? Your brother just called me. And I don't want that, I don't want to be lying to them.
Sure.
And just call them up. Let them know you're all right. She's like, I ain't calling them. F them, blah, blah, blah. He's like, Linda, please. So she's like, so that was about as far as the conversation went. And another few days go by. 3 days go by. There's another phone call. It's Mrs. Albano, the mom. And she was a very nice lady. And Ritchie said, when I answer, it's like Ritchie, please.
Very Italian. They're very Italian.
Right,
Yeah.
very. I know you. Listen, I know you. You must know where Linda is.
Oh.
We're so upset.
Yeah.
And she's like, Mrs. Albano, I don't know. I haven't heard from her. She goes, oh, please, please tell her to call us. If you could find out where she is, I'd be so grateful.
Oh.
Right? So
Poor Mrs. Albano.
Ritchie hangs up. He's like, Jesus Christ. He calls her. Now he calls again.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't get her the first call, so whatever it took to get her.
Yeah.
When he finally got her, he says, look, I ain't dealing with this no more. Your mother's calling.
Yeah.
Now at first it was your brother. Now it's your mother. And just call them. I'm not going to lie anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I'm not calling them. They're paying, whatever the story was,
Right.
She was completely right. They were completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple more days go by, and Ritchie's out on his stoop, he tells me, and he's smoking a cigarette on this hot August night in Yonkers, and the big red Cadillac
No.
down the street.
No.
And he knew whose red Cadillac because he had been with Lou Albano
Yeah.
a number of times. And he said, the car drove up on my side of the street. So the car was fancy enough that it had power windows. So the passenger window goes down with Lou sitting in the driver's seat. It says, Ritchie, come here, get in the car.
No.
And Ritchie gets in the car. There's Lou right there.
Yeah.
With Uncle Gunny.
Yeah. And Killer Khan in the background.
Yeah, sure.
For the people that may be...
So there's Lou Albano. And that's right in that era.
Yeah.
Right in that era. So, thank you, man. So, Ritchie gets in the car, and Lou Albano says, Ritchie, I know you know where Linda is. And Ritchie was like, did his best Jackie Gleason, Ralph Crammer, and he just said to me, they're not driving, they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
He goes, second time, he goes, Ritchie. And he didn't even have to say the second, I know you know where she is.
Yeah.
And he goes, Mr. Albano, I've called her. I'm sorry that I lied to your mom. I'm sorry that I lied to your son. I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry. But I did call her. I called her twice already. He goes, look, I'm not mad at you. My wife is so upset. We're all upset. But can you please call her and have her call us? So once again, Ritchie goes, calls Linda, gets hold of her, said, look, I'm not dealing, I can't deal with this. At which point, she still was given the hard line routine that I'm not going to call them. He's like, you got to call them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have your parents call me every day. I told them I know where you are.
Yeah.
So now I'm the liar too.
Oh, yeah.
So she's whatever. That's about as far as the conversation went. Well, the very next day, his phone rings again, and it's Lou Albano.
Wow.
He says, Ritchie, thank you. Linda called us.
Oh.
I want you to do me a favor. He goes, yeah, sure, Mr. Albano. What's up? He goes, I got a wrestling date in Chicago. It was like on Saturday or something coming up that weekend. I want you to come with me. And Linda's going to come in and meet us and try to get things back on track. And
wow.
He went. And, I might have this, Ritchie might have told me the story with the city was wrong because, in other words, WWF really wasn't running Chicago
Wasn't really
at the time.
Right.
Maybe it was in Pittsburgh.
Sure.
And, but whatever. There was a plane flight involved. There were two plane flights. And Linda came.
Wow.
And everything. And she came back. And it was a nice ending to that story.
Yeah.
But the Albano family were solid people, as well as Ritchie Scarlett.
He's got a great reputation. I'm Italian American, so it's Bruno and it's Lou, with the Italian American fans. But Lou also has there's always that murmur that he might have been connected. Was there any?
I don't know.
Any worry about?
I don't think he was worried about that. The story about when it was him and Tony Altamori and the Sicilians,
right,
out in Chicago in we're talking the late 50s, early 60s,
right,
where Sam Giancana, the boss of Chicago mob,
no, I don't.
The same Sam Giancana who's tied into the Kennedy assassination, the same Sam
allegedly,
the same Sam Giancana who it was just a mobster of legendary proportions.
Yeah, allegedly with JFK's father too.
Right?
Didn't he help deliver Illinois?
Right,
allegedly?
he delivered Illinois and West Virginia because he had these Union connections.
Yeah,
but but they were upset that the Lou Albano and his partner Tony Altamori, their name of the gimmick was the Sicilians. And they didn't say they were the mafia, but they were the Sicilians.
They implied.
And and that was the Dumont. Maybe it was post Dumont network.
It was probably right after Dumont. Yeah, because Dumont would have been Chicago. Dumont was 53 to 56.
Right. So it was after that. Yeah. But the point is, they were told, wow, we don't want no Sicilians being portrayed on TV. Being portrayed on TV because they dressed up like like, you know, they came into like a classic gangster would, you know,
Sure.
with the fedora and the suit jacket before they got into their trunks. But yeah, and then of course there's the Lou Albano stories of him, his legendary drinking.
Right.
And he was hired, and here's another reference some of our fans will get. He was hired and fired more times than Billy Martin.
Yeah.
You know, from WWF.
Right.
WWF.
Right.
You know, he would get drunk, and Vince Sr. and Vince Jr. was like, you're done. But they'd always let him back. They'd always let him back. So, yeah, Ritchie was my buddy and Bonnie Parker. The Bonnie Parker gigs, sometimes Shredded Ed would come. I had to try to keep all these guys away from each other.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
And because George was a big rock and roll guy, and he was around. I didn't want these guys, like, you know, bumping into each other. So
what was your biggest fear?
They would both know that I'm getting drugs from each of them, and I owed all of them money.
Well, yeah, that's a good fear.
Right. So there was two particular gigs I remember of the Bonnie Parker era. And they're both both of them were disasters. One was a disaster. The second one was a disaster with a twist ending. But there's, oh God, we don't do our research. There's a college down by like Ambler, PA.
Oh, that's Temple Ambler.
Well, maybe so. All right, fine. We'll say that's where it is.
Okay.
So we have a 2-night gig in South Jersey, outside of the Camden area.
Okay.
Before Camden was really, really big. It wasn't in Camden, but whatever. Mm-hmm. That Cherry Hill area.
Deptford, Cherry Hill.
Right. There were a bunch of clubs, and we were at this place.
Cinnaminson, maybe. There's still a lot of clubs there. Yeah.
And it was a Friday, Saturday night. Well, this Derek, this manager of Bonnie Parker, and they didn't pay shit. You know, it's like he books a Saturday afternoon gig at the Temple Ambler campus that had a botanical garden.
That's definitely Temple Ambler. Yeah.
Am I talking about the right place?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So me and Bob, Derek's telling us, look, you don't have to take down the lights. We don't need lights. It's a daytime gig. We just got to bring the PA equipment and the stage equipment. So Friday night, we pack up the truck. Mm-hmm. And so in theory, we got to pack up, go to this place, do the gig, repack up, and get back to this club. Well, the Botanical Garden had a giant hill. Giant hill, what am I saying? It was a steep grade.
Is this the Morris Arboretum?
Maybe.
Because this sounds like that's near Ambler, yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
So, and the truck was so bad that the first gear didn't work.
Oh, geez. No.
So we get the truck down, and we set the stuff up. And the kids from the college, this must be like a highbrow college, right? Well, it wasn't you would think that I would be hip to this, but there was maybe 300 kids, and you never went to any Grateful Dead shows or
I've been to Dave Matthews quite a bit. Yeah, it's not.
These kids,
AJ, our producer, not even that.
These kids were all tripping.
Been to Pearl Jam. A lot of people tripping at Pearl Jam.
They're all tripping because Bonnie Parker's music was not music you danced like Dead style, like with that spinning.
The flow. They do the flow at Dave Matthews.
Right.
Come on. I mean, I know it's not the Dead.
Right.
No,
so
okay.
And I didn't even. It's like it didn't even add up to me. Like we're doing these. They're doing like Immigrant Song.
Yeah.
And these great, Deep Purple and these other heavy rock. Anthems that Bonnie would do, and they're dancing, like it's a Dead show. And I'm like, after a while, they're all fucking tripping. A whole bunch of them. But that's not the story.
No.
The story was we had to get the equipment back.
Yeah.
The truck wouldn't get up the hill.
Oh.
So now it's like 5 o'clock. Now, from Ambler, even with good traffic,
Yeah.
and there's certain roads we couldn't drive the truck on. Like I don't know if we could go on the Schuylkill. I don't know if we could go on this or that.
Right.
At 5 o'clock, it would have put us back at the club at like the earliest 6:30.
Right.
And then all the equipment had to come off.
Yeah.
So the truck stuck, and I call up this Derek.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, he's like, oh, you can't get it up the hill. I go, we need a tow truck.
Yeah.
And we didn't have money.
Yeah.
I don't know how we were able to. We should have got that tow truck guy from Bristol, Tennessee to come. But we had it. We got a tow truck. He must have had a credit card.
Yeah.
And he called this tow truck. It was like one of these. You ever see like on the highway this giant tow truck with a winch.
They tow truck.
They
tow
wenched.
trucks. Yeah.
They wenched it up the hill. By the time it was wenched up the hill, and all this, the call was made, it was paid for, and they had to come there. It was like 7 o'clock. So by the time we were on the road, it was like 7:30, and I called Derek from a payphone. I'm like, dude, the club opens probably like 7:30. The opening set's like 9 o'clock. I go, you better tell all these guys from the band, and that we're gonna need help.
Yeah.
Because me and Bob ain't gonna. We were exhausted to schlep this stuff in. So everybody helped, got the stuff on stage, and the show went on.
Nice.
Bonnie, as I said, was she had some originals, and she was trying desperately to get a little record deal. Mm-hmm. And I saw her like 7-8 years ago.
Wow.
She's still around. She's my age, and she's still rocking.
Yeah.
And anyway, we thought this was, she thought this was a big deal. Now, I'm going to mention a band that nobody's going to know that was able to have, a half a sellout at the theater in Reading. There was a band called Stars. Starzzz.
Oh, wow. I've never heard of it.
I mentioned it to my cousin.
Yeah.
And they were a one-hit wonder, glitter, heavy kind of act.
New York Dolls, Tubes.
Well, more like an early version of Poison.
Okay.
But they weren't very good.
Yeah, maybe a little ahead of their time.
But good enough.
Yeah.
And they had this one record that was being played on the radio, and Bonnie was going to be the opening act. So we're like, wow, we're going to get to do a theater, and I'm going to get to do lighting. Even though they're going to dictate, if they have a modest amount of rock and roll theater lighting, they're not going to let, and this still exists to this day.
Yeah.
Bruce isn't going to let he doesn't usually have an opening act.
Right, but Pearl Jam wouldn't let.
Right, the opening act would get to use like 20% of the lighting.
Sure.
We had been down the shore somewhere. There was this club called Bullwinkle's. How I pull this stuff out of my ass. This club called Bullwinkle's. If you got off the turnpike by exit 3 and headed not towards Philly, but into like the heart of like the Jersey Devil part of New Jersey.
Okay, so we're talking past Jackson.
Oh, way below that.
Way below. So toward Cape May and Wildwood.
So you'd be going like exit 3 and these like these roads that would be equivalent to like Route 611 that would like slowly amble you eventually towards Ocean City, Atlanta. Yes, down there. And this was in the middle.
Oh,
right?
Ooh, okay.
And so we had a show there. I think this concert was on a Sunday. And we had the Saturday night at that place. And at the time, from knowing George, there was a guy who used to be around, and he would have sealed bottles of quaaludes, real authentic quaaludes. They're not even made anymore.
Right. They're dangerous.
Yeah, they're in the league of, I guess you would compare them to like ecstasy, which I don't have a lot of, even I don't have a lot of experience with. These party drugs, but these were the real McCoy. And I had a bunch of them, right? And it wasn't even like you could take them, depending on who you were, you could either take them and operate on them despite the effects.
Wow.
Or they could totally, you'd completely be out of it. Like a guy like Ritchie Scarlett would be like, well, after the show.
Yeah.
Well, it was after the show.
Oh.
And the drummer, the aforementioned, what do we call him, Dave?
Yeah, Dave. Yeah.
He told me, he asked me, do I have a couple? I go, yeah. He said, I got this girl, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, no.
So I gave him a couple. Wasn't a you got to buy them kind of thing. Oh, here. Well, he wasn't used to these things. And we go to Reading, and we get there, and all we got to do is drag in the stage equipment because they're using their PA. And I remember the lighting, they had like very modest. They had like four on each side. They had the towers on the sides of the stage with like 4 blues, 4 reds, 4 greens, 4 ambers, 4 something else, and then white. And then behind the stage, the backlighting was modest though.
Sure.
And then the only front lighting was a follow spotlight. So the lighting guy from Stars says to me, look, I remember he taped the lighting board off. So all I could use would be the side lights, not even the white ones.
Okay. Just
like the blue, red, yellow, green, and no backlighting. And you could use a follow spot. I'm like, all right, fine, I get it. And got to use the headphone.
Very cool.
Where you're talking to the follow spot guy.
Yeah.
Well, it's exciting. It's exciting. And I had told a few of my friends to come out. I had this girl who I had some fun times with, Bob and Robin. And
oh, geez. Don't want to ask where that came from, but we'll go through that.
And there was this other guy who was a friend of mine, Jan, and he was a good-looking dude, and I'd known him for a while, and they knew that I was a libertine, so. And I'd asked some other people to come out, but they came out to the show.
Wow.
They must have got there early, because how I would find them.
Sure.
Not that there were so many people there.
Hey,
but anyway, the point of the story is our poor little drummer, Dave, slept, was so knocked out from the quaaludes that he was unable to attend. And it was the show was 8:00, and they're calling.
Oh,
and
no.
I felt somewhat responsible, but at the same time, and the manager of Stars at one point says well, is this guy coming or not?
Yeah.
And I remember Bonnie's crying, and this guy, Derek, the manager of Bonnie Parker, he's upset. And it's like at 7:45 was like the deadline. If you don't see this drummer.
Yeah.
And I remember whoever the MC was says, we're sorry, but our opening act is to support act Monty Parker is unable to play tonight. The fans could care less. They were there for stars.
Yeah.
And, we'll be back in, 10 minutes with stars. And Bonnie's crying, and it was awful. But, and I lost my first chance to do, as minimal as it was, some actual concert lighting. But there was a fun thing that happened at the end.
Okay.
I had a hotel room that Bonnie supplied for some reason. And I went back there with Jan and Robin.
Oh, wow.
Right.
We talked about your generosity before. So you're just sharing the hotel room. You go to sleep. You wake up refreshed. You apologize to Bonnie. And that, there's more.
I had more of these quaaludes.
Oh, no. Cary. Cary.
And that was the first time, and one of the only times, but that was the first time I was able to be involved in a literal three-way. It just broke out without any kind of negotiations, foreplay, this, that, the other thing.
Wow.
It just happened. And the
70s were wild.
If things could just happen like that.
And again, we're touching on something that I think deserves a full episode, because we've talked about sexuality a bit and that sort of thing. And of course, we both support the pride efforts and so on. So that'll be another episode for another day, I think. But in the 70s, wow, that could just happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking back to that fond evening. Talk about a sad moment and a great moment. It was so bad for Bonnie.
Yeah.
And well,
if it makes you feel any better, if it makes Bonnie feel any better, I've seen Bonnie's name advertised, and I've not seen Star's name advertised.
Bonnie's still around. She's not right now, but she's still working, and she's a trooper, and she's really cool. When I got to see her, like I said, 8 years ago, she remembered me. She's been through like 100 of me, and it's not like we hung out a long time, but we exchanged pleasantries, and I stayed and watched her set. Her set she actually was at CBGB's, strangely enough.
No way.
Yeah, at the end, towards CBGB's, closed?
05, 06,
maybe it was that far back.
Maybe even a little, maybe 08 or 09.
Yeah.
But
that's my time with Bonnie Parker.
Wow.
And I might have worked with her through the summer of 70. Now we're talking the summer of 77, and I don't know, what the final.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the final
straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, I don't think it was. There might have been another week or two of gigs, and I was so involved with the cocaine that I almost didn't want to do the job anymore. Because it was just.
Yeah. How in the era before cell phones, did you ever feel like you were in danger? You owed at least 4, possibly 5 people money, and you were getting this quantity of illegal substance. Was there ever a time when you got a knock on the door where you started to get paranoid at any point?
Oh, always. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was, I was being beyond reckless, beyond reckless, and talk about pressing your luck.
Yeah.
So I had in some as we go on with this, we'll hear some stories that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. Not
just Bonnie Parker's camel's back, my camel's back eventually.
Oh my goodness.
But I think we should wrap this up.
Sure.
A lot of good things going on with ROH.
Yeah. So as we're taping this, we're anticipating being in Baltimore. And as you hear this on Friday morning, if you listen to it the day it comes out, I am currently calling matches for Ring of Honor.
That must make you happy.
It does. It does. I don't necessarily miss the leaving my family at home, but the bubble situation, the plan, working directly with the Maryland State Athletic Commission, that's really cool. And I'm glad they looked out for us, and I'm glad that we have a game plan. There's companies that are trying in good faith right now, but I truly believe Ring of Honor's doing the best out of anybody.
Yeah, I mean, they took their time. They're doing it right. I've spoke to Cary today, and this has to be done right, and it's being done right. So it was worth the wait. I'm sad that I'm not going to be there, but I understand.
Yeah, and it's going to be an incredible series of matches. Of course, not a secret in the press release that was put out on ROHWrestling.com, the Pure Championship. We're going to try and pick up right where we left off. We intend to have the tournament in April. And
it's hard to believe that it was, my memory, as good as it might be for odd situations of Bonnie Parker, right. I had forgotten until we looked it up that the last time the Pure title was reared its head and it was retired was in London or in Liverpool, rather. 2006,
right. Unified. Right. Nigel was the Pure champion. And
14 years.
Wow. It feels like yesterday. I was in New York City when that match happened. And I think that was the day my nephew was born. I think it was September, wasn't it? September. My nephew was born the 22nd.
It might have been August, but
August.
Yeah.
So right around that time period. That was the first time I became an uncle.
There you go.
Yeah, and I met my wife same week. Good week. Good couple of weeks.
Well, it's a good couple of weeks, and please subscribe to the podcast. Put the word out. We'll be back at you with some more of these interesting stories and these interesting characters. Once again, I like to listen to Dutch Mantel, and he's got a good podcast, University of Dutch, and he's an older gentleman like I am, and he says, if I don't tell these stories now, they're just going to die when I die. So you got to put these stories out there.
Absolutely, and I'm curious to see how you're going to escape the what was a triangle. Now it's a pentagon of folks that you owe money, and maybe some cocaine also. And I'm curious because you're alive and living color right in front of me right now. So somehow you made it.
Somehow I made it.
So we're gonna get through maybe next time. As like you said, the camel's not the camel, but the proverbial camel's back begins to break.
Okay, we'll get into that. And I returned to rock and roll.
Okay,
the Bonnie Parker thing. I returned with two bands. There was a band called the Zapp. ZAPP, the Zapp Band, which was, they saw the Bonnie Parker, they opened up for Bonnie Parker when we were down the shore. There was a place called Dunes Till Dawn in Summers Point, New Jersey. Summers Point is right outside of Ocean City.
Okay.
So Ocean City in New Jersey is a dry city. Yeah. So Summers Point was the opposite. They let the bars stay open 24 hours.
Wow.
So Dunes to Dawn, the title, the name of the business, they weren't messing around, because if you were at a bar in Philadelphia, they would have 2 or 3 acts. So the Zapp Band was one of the acts, because let's say Bonnie Parker, your first set is 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Your second set is 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Your last set is 4 a.m.
Wow.
So if you were in Philadelphia, let's just say an hour and a change to get to Jersey Shore, mm-hmm. or even if you were in even in any part of Jersey, depending on how far, or even New York City,
yeah,
you could, if the bars were closing in Central Jersey at 2 o'clock, you could take a quick hour-and-a-half ride, and the place is open till 7 in the morning.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so there's some debauchery there.
Well, I think it was the great, was it Ice Cube or Ice T? Nothing good happens after 3 a.m.
No.
So maybe we'll hear some more stories about that.
We will.
Zapp Band.
Zapp Band. Waterfront was another band I spent time with. There's some good stories with them. And eventually, for a brief run with Crystal Ship, which was this Doors tribute band that was really popular at the time. But I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Yeah, all those and more next week on Last Stop Penn Station. For Cary Silken, I'm Ian Riccaboni. Happy wrestling. Thanks for listening. Rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And we'll be at you next Friday. Thanks, everybody.
I thank God it stole the handle, and the train and won't stop going, no, it just slowed down.
We hail you for listening to Last Stop Penn Station podcast. Rate, review, like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or at laststoppennstation.com.